There is a particular kind of exhaustion that comes from trying to fight your way out of a storm that was never going to listen. And it is not the storm that wears you down. It is the fighting. Tonight, I want to tell you about a typhoon that pinned a wandering swordswoman against a mountain temple for 3 days, and the small thing she finally did on the third afternoon, and what happened in the storm between the moment she did it and the moment the wind changed. Her name is Tsubaki. She is a ronin, with no master to return to, the world she trained for already over by the time she turned 20. She walks the old roads of Bakumatsu, Japan, with one katana on her left hip, hand-bound at the hilt with deep red cord. She is 30. There is a fine scar over her left eye that she does not speak of. She speaks rarely about anything. She was on the 8th day of a long crossing along the spine of a mountain, when the sky, in a single afternoon, stopped being a sky and became weather. She knew the signs: a sea grey behind the high cloud, a wind that came in 3 different directions in the same minute, the smell of rain that had not yet fallen. She made it to the small temple on the south side of the pass before the first sheets of water came down. The temple was old and small and not famous. A wooden gate, a gravel path, 3 monks of indeterminate age, a single stove for cooking, 2 rooms behind the main hall for travellers caught in weather. The monks did not ask her name. They showed her a room and a low futon and a small clay bowl of barley. They returned to what they had been doing. What they had been doing was sweeping the floor. The typhoon arrived in full that night. She lay on the futon in the dark, listening to the wind try to pull the temple's wooden joints apart and fail. She did not sleep. By dawn, the rain was sideways. The path down the mountain was a stream. The monks, when she came out of her room, were sweeping the floor of the main hall. By dawn, the rain was sideways. The path down the mountain was a stream. She watched them for the length of one slow breath. Then she set the saya across her sash and stepped out onto the covered walkway and tried to read the storm. The wind hit her at chest height, and she had to set her shoulder against a wooden post. She watched the path that had been the road yesterday. She watched the river that had been a path. After perhaps a quarter of an hour, she came back inside, the haori soaked at the shoulders, and the monks were still sweeping the floor of the main hall. By the second morning, the voice had arrived in her. Not the voice that says, "You are not enough." The older, inner voice she knew well. But the close cousin of it, the one that says, "You are wasting your life sitting here. There is somewhere you were supposed to be. The road is going on without you." She paced the wooden corridor between her room and the main hall. She walked the covered walkway and stood at the gate. She watched the rain. She came back inside. She paced. The monks swept the floor. She did, twice that day, what a person does when they cannot bear the inside of their own head. She tried to leave. The first time, she got perhaps 50 paces beyond the gate before a gust took her sideways and put her knee on the wet stones, and she came back drenched. The second time, she did not even get to the gate. The rain was a wall. She stood for a long time at the threshold of the covered walkway, holding the post, listening to the voice tell her that she was weak, that she was a coward, that any real swordsman would have fought through to the next pass by now, that the storm was a test she was failing. The monks swept the floor. That night, she did not sleep again. She lay on the futon and ran every old battle in her head. The river ford, the dojo, the marsh. She fought every one of them again on the dark side of her eyelids, and lost every one again, and rose to fight them once more. By the grey before dawn, she was so tired she could not remember which century she was in. She heard, faintly, the sound of a straw broom on a wooden floor in the next room. On the third afternoon, when the wind had been blowing for 2.5 days straight, she did the smallest thing. She came out of her room. She walked into the main hall. She stood at the edge of the wooden floor where one of the monks, the oldest of them perhaps, though it was hard to tell, had paused to rest the broom against his side. She bowed to him slightly. She did not speak. He bowed back. He held the broom out to her. She took it. She began, at the corner farthest from the door, to sweep. She swept slowly, the way she had seen the monks sweep, with a stroke that came from the shoulder and not the wrist. The straw bundle whispered against the wooden boards. There were more boards than she had counted in 2 days of pacing. She found that there were dust curls at the edges where the wall met the floor that had been there a long time. She swept them out into the middle of the hall. She gathered them into a small pile. She bowed to the small pile, faintly, the way she would have bowed to a teacher. The voice in her head was still speaking. "This is absurd. You are a swordswoman. There is a road going on without you." She did not answer it. She swept the pile. Outside, the wind continued to do what the wind had been doing for 2.5 days. She did not, particularly, notice when it began to slacken. She was, by then, on the third corner of the hall. Some time before the sun would have set on a normal day, though there was no sun visible, the rain stopped. The wind dropped to a wide, steady breath, then to nothing at all. The air smelled, very suddenly, of wet pine. She did not look up from the floor for some moments after the silence. She did not, for those moments, want to. It was here, kneeling at the third corner of a wooden hall in a mountain temple she would never come back to, with a borrowed straw broom in her hand and the small pile of dust at her foot, that she felt the turn come into her, quiet as a held breath. The storm had not been hers to win. The storm had been weather. The teaching had not been, "You are weak." The teaching had been, "The wind is not your opponent. The road is not your opponent. The voice that tells you to fight your way out is itself the storm." The voice in her head, all those 2 days, had been telling her that the storm was a test of her strength. The voice had been wrong on its face. The storm did not know she was there. The storm did not, in any way that meant anything, test her. It simply was, the way a winter is, the way a mountain is. The thing that had been testing her had been the part of her that wanted, urgently, to fight a thing that could not be fought. The monks, who had done none of the fighting, had spent the same 3 days doing what their ordinary day required. They had swept the floor. When the storm ended, they were already inside the practice that the storm had not been able to interrupt. She had only joined them half an hour before the wind dropped. There are storms in your own head that you will spend years trying to fight your way out of, and the fighting is almost always the part that is wearing you out, not the storm. The voice that tells you this is a test and you are failing it, and any real version of you would have fought through to the next pass by now, is itself the wind. You cannot reason with it. You cannot duel it. The practice, when the storm comes, is not to fight the storm. The practice is the small, ordinary thing your day already required of you. Make the bed, Drink the glass of water. Sweep the floor. Some storms in your mind are not yours to win. They are weather. You wait. You sweep the floor. They pass. Good night.